Describe a shape. Four sides, a square base. Walls that rise from the earth and taper inward, converging on a single point in the sky. A form so simple a child can draw it. So stable that the oldest examples have survived 5,000 years of earthquakes, floods, and empires rising and falling around their feet. You already know this shape. Everyone on Earth knows this shape. It is stamped into our collective visual memory as deeply as the circle or the cross. Now here is the problem. The pyramid was not invented once. It rose in Egypt, in Mexico, in Peru, in China, in Indonesia, built independently by civilizations that never met. Peoples with no ships capable of crossing oceans, no shared alphabet, no common gods, no trade routes linking their worlds. Separated by everything that can separate human beings and joined by this one form. And in two cases, on opposite sides of an ocean, in the same century. The same shape, the same monumental ambition, the same staggering investment of human labor, repeated across the planet by builders who, according to everything we know about ancient history, never exchanged a single word. How?
Look at what we are dealing with. In Giza, Egypt, the Great Pyramid of Khufu rises 146 meters above the desert. For nearly 4,000 years, the tallest structure on Earth. It was built around 2560 BCE from roughly 2.3 million limestone blocks, some weighing as much as 40 tons, in a construction effort estimated at 20 years. An ocean away, in the highlands of Mexico, the Pyramid of the Sun at Teotihuacan stands about 71 meters tall, on a base of roughly 230 meters, a footprint on the same scale as the giants of Giza. It was raised around 200 CE by a civilization so thoroughly forgotten that even the Aztecs, arriving centuries later, had no idea who its builders were. On the coast of Peru, the pyramids of Caral were rising at the same historical moment as Egypt's first pyramids, around 3000 BCE. 6 of them, built by a people with no pottery, no writing, no weapons, and an ambition to rival anything in the old world. In Indonesia, the stepped pyramid of Borobudur encodes an entire cosmos in stone. 9 platforms, 504 statues, more than 2,600 relief panels. And nearby sits Gunung Padang, a hillside that one retracted scientific paper claimed was the oldest pyramid on Earth. We will come back to that word, retracted. And in China, more than 400 pyramidal mounds cluster on the plains of Shanxi province, barely known to the outside world. These are the data points. These are the facts any theory must explain. And the question running through all of them is the one that has divided archaeologists, geologists, and independent researchers for decades. Is this a coincidence? Or is this a pattern? We begin where the pattern is sharpest, at the Great Pyramid of Khufu. Every school child learns 2 things about it. It is very big and it is very old. Both are true. Both are the least interesting things about it. What is generally unsettling is what hides inside its proportions. The ancient Egyptians defined the slope of a pyramid using a system called the Seked, how many palms of horizontal run for every cubit of vertical rise. The Great Pyramid's Seked is 5.5 palms, which produces a slope of approximately 51.84 degrees. That angle is not just steep, it is precise in a way that should make you sit up. Build a pyramid at this angle and something remarkable happens. The ratio of its slant height to half its base comes out at 1.618. That number is phi, the golden ratio, one of the most celebrated constants in nature, the number hiding in the spiral of a nautilus shell, in the branching of trees, in the arrangement of seeds across the face of a sunflower, in the proportions of the human body itself. And it gets stranger. Take the perimeter of the pyramid's base
and divided by its height, 6.283, 2 times pi. The relationship between a circle's circumference and its diameter, the geometry of the heavens themselves, standing in the desert in 40-ton blocks of limestone. Two of mathematics' most famous constants, both accurate to within a fraction of a percent, both embedded in a structure built 4,500 years ago. So, the honest question: did the Egyptians know what they were doing? This is where scholarship fractures. One camp argues the Seked system produces phi-like ratios naturally without anyone ever conceiving of the golden ratio. You pick a practical slope, you build, and phi falls out as a byproduct, not a design choice. Most scholars stand here. The other camp asks, if it is a byproduct, how do you explain the precision? An error of less than 0.2% from perfect phi is not the kind of number that tumbles out of casual construction. And the pi relationship is independent of the phi relationship, two separate mathematical signatures in one building. But here is the detail that troubles both camps equally. Among the more than 100 known pyramids of Egypt, the Great Pyramid is the only one where phi and pi appear at this level of accuracy. The others show widely varying angles, different shekeds, different slopes, no signature. If the Egyptians understood these constants, why encode them only once in one building and never again across 1,000 years of pyramid construction? And if they did not understand them, how did the accident happen only once and perfectly? There is no comfortable answer, so hold the question. It will follow us around the world. Because to find the next piece of this pattern, we have to cross an ocean no ancient Egyptian ever crossed.
The Valley of Mexico, roughly 2,000 years ago. A city is rising in the highland basin north of what will one day be Mexico City. Its architects lay out a central boulevard, the Avenue of the Dead, and an entire urban grid, all of it locked to a single orientation, the orientation of the Pyramid of the Sun. The pyramid comes first, the city obeys it. Centuries later, the city is abandoned, and when the Aztecs find the ruins, they do not know, no one knows, who built them. They name the place Teotihuacan, the birthplace of the gods. Because only gods, they reasoned, could have built something like this. In a sense, they were right to be humbled. To this day, we do not know what these people called themselves, what language they spoke, or why they walked away from their greatest achievement. We only know what they left behind. And what they left behind is deliberate. The Pyramid of the Sun was positioned to align with Cerro Gordo, the sacred mountain to its north, and with sunrises and sunsets on specific dates. Archaeoastronomers have proposed something remarkable about its orientation. The pyramid faces the setting sun on August 11th and April 29th, two dates separated by 260 days. 260 is the exact length of the sacred Mesoamerican calendar, the Tonalpowali. If that reading is right, and it remains a hypothesis, not a closed case, the builders encoded their most sacred number into the very angle of their largest monument. You may have heard a bolder claim that the Pyramid of the Sun's base is identical to the base of the Pyramid of Khafre at Giza, 215 meters, stone for stone, an ocean apart. Look closer and the claim dissolves. Surveys of the Pyramid of the Sun disagree with each other, ranging from 215 to 230 meters, depending on who measured and where. What survives the scrutiny is not a match. It is a scale. Two civilizations, unaware of each other, building to the same order of magnitude. That is still worth your astonishment. It just isn't a fingerprint. And there is a deeper difference hiding in the similarity. Egyptian pyramids are sealed tombs, houses for the dead. Mesoamerican pyramids are temple platforms, stages for the living, with sanctuaries at their summits. The same shape, serving opposite purposes.
The form persists even when the function reverses entirely. If Teotihuacan can be explained by independent invention, two civilizations separately discovering the most stable monumental form, then Caral presents a different kind of problem. Not a problem of similarity, a problem of timing. The sacred city of Caral sits in the Supe Valley of coastal Peru, on a dry desert terrace above the river's floodplain. Construction began around 3000 BCE. Let that date settle. 3000 BCE, the same era in which Egypt's earliest pyramids were rising and the Great Age of Giza was about to begin. On opposite sides of the planet, two civilizations that could not possibly have known of each other's existence were deciding at the same time to stack stone into monumental pyramids. Caral has 6 of them. The largest, the Pirámide Mayor, stands roughly 30 meters tall on a base the size of 4 football fields, facing sunken circular plazas and great staircases, in a sacred city spreading across more than 600 hectares. Woven materials from the site have been carbon dated to around 3000 BCE. The dating is solid. But Caral is not a miniature Egypt, and that is precisely the point. The Norte Chico civilization that built it had no pottery, no written script, no weapons, no evidence of organized warfare at all. A society organized around ceremony and the exchange of coastal fish for inland cotton, and yet sophisticated enough to leave behind a quipu, the knotted recording device the Inca would still be using 4,000 years later. This is why Caral matters so much. When skeptics of independent invention say, they must have gotten the idea from somewhere, Caral answers, from where? There were no ocean-crossing vessels in 3000 BCE. There was no contact between the Americas and Africa. These people developed pyramid building entirely on their own, in their own way, for their own reasons, at the same moment as the Egyptians. Archaeologist Ruth Shady, who has led the excavation since the 1990s, calls Caral the oldest center of civilization in the Americas. UNESCO inscribed it as a World Heritage Site in 2009. The evidence is robust, the dating is confirmed, and the implication cuts deep. The pyramid is not an Egyptian export. It is something that rises out of human beings wherever they gather in sufficient numbers, the strongest case of independent invention in the entire archaeological record. Two peoples, 0 contact, the same form in the same century. Whatever theory you favor by the end of this journey, it must survive Caral. Hold on to that. We will return to it at the very end.
The mainstream archaeological position deserves a fair hearing, because it is strong. The argument goes like this. If you want to build tall, you need a stable base. The wider the base relative to the height, the more stable the structure. The most efficient way to gain height without collapse is to taper, each course smaller than the one below. Follow that logic to its end, and you arrive at a pyramid. This is not a cultural choice, it is physics. Gravity pulls material down. A wide base spreads the load. Sloping sides relieve the upper courses. Any civilization experimenting with monumental construction will eventually converge on this form through trial and error. And Egypt itself preserves the trial and error in stone. At Meidum, an early pyramid's outer casing collapsed, leaving a tower of rubble in a ring of debris. At Dahshur, the bent pyramid changes angle halfway up. Its builders realized, mid-construction, that their slope was too steep to hold. Egypt did not receive pyramid building from anywhere. It failed its way to mastery, one ruined monument at a time. This argument explains why the form recurs worldwide without any contact between cultures. It explains Caral. It explains the shape. But notice what it does not explain. It does not explain why the Great Pyramid encodes Phi and Pi, while 100 of its siblings do not. It does not explain why Teotihuacan's orientation may encode a sacred calendar. It does not explain, as we are about to see, why a pyramid in Indonesia follows a single proportional ratio from its base to its summit. Structural logic explains why civilizations built pyramids. It does not explain what they whisper into them. And Egypt and Peru, it turns out, are not the only players in this pattern. On the plains of Shanxi province, within a few hours of the ancient capital of Xi'an, stand more than 400 pyramidal structures
that most of the world has never heard of. They are not hidden. They are visible from satellite. They are the burial mounds of emperors, flat-topped pyramids of packed earth and clay, raised over some 2,000 years of imperial history. The West discovered them through legend. In 1912, a trader named Fred Meyer Schroeder is said to have recorded in his diary a giant pyramid nearly 1,000 feet tall, surrounded by a court of smaller pyramids. Though the account survives only in popular retellings, never in any academic record. During the Second World War, US pilot James Gossman reported a white, jewel-topped pyramid shining below his aircraft. And in 1947, Colonel Maurice Sheahan gave his own eyewitness account to the New York Times. And this time, the story stuck. So was a Great White Pyramid, 300 meters tall, dwarfing Giza, really out there? The most likely candidate is Maoling, the tomb of Emperor Wu of Han, who ruled from 156 to 87 BCE. It is vast, it is pyramidal, and it is about 50 meters tall, 1/6 of the legend. Either the pilots saw something no survey has ever confirmed, or distance, altitude, and expectation did what they always do, made what was seen match what was hoped for. Here is what the legend obscures. The mounds themselves were never a secret to science. They were known and documented long before the sensational stories made them famous, and long before Western pseudo-historians began wrapping them in talk of aliens and lost races. Strip the noise away, and what remains is stranger than the legend. 400 structures repeating the global pattern with a twist. The same form as Egypt, even the same funerary purpose, tombs for god-kings, but a radically different technique. Earth, not stone. Rammed clay, not quarried blocks. No evidence anywhere of transmitted knowledge. The pattern holds, the methods don't. The mystery deepens.
If China's pyramids echo Egypt's purpose, then Borobudur on the island of Java shatters every remaining assumption about what a pyramid is for. Built around 800 CE, Borobudur is a stepped pyramid 118 meters on each side, rising 35 meters through 9 platforms, 6 square, 3 circular. At the summit sits a great central stupa surrounded by 72 smaller perforated ones, each holding a seated Buddha, half visible through the latticed stone. This is not a tomb. It is not a temple platform. It is not an observatory. It is a three-dimensional mandala, a map of the Buddhist cosmos rendered in stone. The base represents Kamadhatu, the world of desire, where humans are trapped in craving. The square terraces above are Rupadhatu, the world of forms. The circular terraces at the top are Arupadhatu, the formless world, where boundaries dissolve. To climb Borobudur is to walk the path of enlightenment, upward through more than 2,600 carved panels, telling the Buddha's story and the stages of awakening, until, on the circular terraces, the reliefs simply stop. No more stories, no more images, nothing left but stupas, silence, and sky. And Borobudur carries its own mathematical signature. A 1977 architectural survey found a single ratio, 4:6:9, repeating throughout the monument, governing the proportions between its parts with striking consistency. Not phi, not pi. A different code, in a different language, serving the same impulse, making stone speak in proportion. Think about what this does to the structural argument. Convergence explains pyramids as the inevitable answer to one engineering question: how do I build tall without collapse? But nobody needs a pyramid to build a mandala. The architects of Borobudur could have built flat or domed or any form they wished. They chose graduated levels rising from a square base toward the sky, because for them, that shape meant something. The ascent itself was the message. The pyramid form, it turns out, can carry any meaning a civilization pours into it.
tomb, temple, cosmos. And it is about to carry one more, a scientific scandal.
Southeast of Borobudur, on a terraced hillside in West Java, sits a genuine megalithic site that has generated more controversy than any archaeological claim of the past decade, Gunung Padang. In October 2023, a team led by Indonesian geologist Dani Hilman Natawijaya published a paper claiming that Gunung Padang was not merely a megalithic site on a hill, it was a constructed pyramid with layers up to 27,000 years old. If true, it would be the oldest pyramid on Earth by more than 20 millennia, and the entire timeline of human civilization would need to be rewritten. The paper made headlines worldwide, and in March 2024, the journal retracted it. The reason was specific. The radiocarbon dates came from soil samples that were not associated with any artifact or feature reliably made by humans. The samples may simply record the age of the dirt, not the age of any construction. The geologist Sutikno Bronto offers a blunter reading of the site. Gunung Padang, he concludes, is the eroded neck of an ancient volcano, its stone columns natural, not stacked. And archaeologist Victor Perez classifies the paper's conclusions with a harder word: pseudo-archaeology. This is where intellectual honesty matters, on both edges of the blade. The retraction does not prove the site is young. It proves that the spectacular claim was not supported by the evidence offered. Excavations continue. New carbon samples have been collected from every terrace, and researchers say results are coming. Gunung Padang may yet surprise everyone, or it may settle into being exactly what the skeptics describe: a volcanic hill that ancient people crowned with stone. The honest answer right now is that nobody knows, and the episode is a masterclass in how badly we want the past to be deeper and stranger than the evidence allows. Remember that hunger. We are about to meet it again, this time standing in front of the Sphinx. Step back from the individual sites and lay the numbers side by side. At Giza, phi and pi accurate to a fraction of a percent. At Teotihuacan, an orientation that may encode the 260-day sacred calendar. At Borobudur, 4, 6, 9, a proportional code threaded through an entire mountain of stone. At Caral, monumental pyramids raised by a people with no writing at all, prove that this impulse does not even require literacy. The pattern is not that all pyramids encode the same mathematics. They don't. The pattern is that pyramid builders everywhere felt compelled to embed order into their monuments, to make the stones say something beyond "we built tall." Why? One answer is simply that we are pattern-seeking creatures. Order satisfies us. When humans build at monumental scale, we instinctively impose regularity, because regularity is how a mind declares meaning. No transmission required, just the same species, solving the same problem, signing it the same way. Now, the promised answer to the phi question, as far as the mathematicians can take us. The mechanism is real and it is mundane, the Seked. Simple, practical ratios in ancient units can generate phi-like and pi-like results without anyone knowing those constants exist. Pick 5.5 palms per cubit because it builds well, and the golden ratio emerges on its own. That is the consensus answer, and it deserves to be heard plainly. The how has an explanation. No lost science is required. It is worth saying clearly, many of the boldest claims about golden ratios hiding in monuments worldwide come not from academic archaeology, but from sacred geometry enthusiasts, pattern hunters who sometimes find what they are looking for because they are looking for it. But strip away every exaggerated claim, and one stubborn residue remains. Why does only one pyramid out of 100 carry the signature so precisely? The Seked explains how phi got into the Great Pyramid. It does not explain why it got in once and never again. That residue is honest mystery, not manufactured mystery, and it is exactly the kind of crack through which more radical ideas come pouring in. Two researchers have pushed through it further than anyone. In 1990, a geologist named Robert Schoch traveled to the Giza Plateau to examine the Great Sphinx and the walls of the pit from which it was carved.
Schoch was not a mystic or a treasure hunter. He was a university geologist from Boston University, and his question was narrow and testable. Does the weathering on those walls match wind and sand? Wind-blown sand cuts horizontal bands and sharp edges into limestone. What Schoch saw instead were rounded, undulating vertical channels, the signature, he argued, of prolonged heavy rainfall streaming down the rock face for centuries. And that is a problem because in the conventional timeline, the Sphinx was carved around 2500 BCE, when Egypt was already desert. For rain like that, you have to go back to the African humid period, the age of the Green Sahara, when rains swept land that is dust today. Combining the erosion with seismic readings of the weathered rock below the surface, Schoch put the Sphinx's minimum age at 7,000 years, and his best estimate near 12,000, around 10,000 BCE. 12,000 years, millennia before writing, before agriculture as we know it, before anything mainstream archaeology recognizes as civilization. If someone carved a colossal monument from bedrock then, who were they? And what else did they build? Now the counterweight, in the same breath, because this is not a settled finding. The hypothesis is, by scientific consensus, a fringe theory, and the majority of archaeologists and Egyptologists reject it. The Sphinx enclosure fits seamlessly into the layout of the Giza complex, which is firmly dated to the 4th dynasty. Limestone quarried from that very enclosure was used in structures attributed to Khafre, meaning the pit existed when Khafre's builders were at work. And localized conditions, including Nile flooding and groundwater, may mimic rainfall erosion without ancient rains. One geologist's reading of the rock against the weight of a discipline. Schoch has never retracted, the discipline has never accepted, and the rock keeps its silence.
If Schoch provides the geological wedge, Graham Hancock provides the story.
In his 1995 book Fingerprints of the Gods, Hancock proposed that an advanced civilization flourished during the last ice age and was destroyed in the cataclysms around the Younger Dryas, roughly 12,800 years ago. Survivors, he argues, carried fragments of architectural and astronomical knowledge to the early cultures of Egypt, Mesopotamia, and the Americas. In this telling, the world's pyramids are not independent inventions. They are inheritances. From a mother culture, the ocean erased. Notice the seduction. Schoch says the Sphinx may be 12,000 years old. Hancock says the cataclysm struck 12,800 years ago. Two arrows pointing at the same lost millennium. But be careful, two fringe claims aimed at the same date do not corroborate each other. They are two hypotheses leaning on the same contested evidence. A question, not a proof. Mainstream science's answer has been blunt. Scientific American published its refutation under a title that leaves no room for doubt. No, there wasn't an advanced civilization 12,000 years ago. There is no direct archaeological trace of any such civilization. No city, no toolkit, no skeleton. Hancock keeps publishing, the field keeps rejecting. And the deepest criticism is not about evidence at all, it is about credit. Every wonder attributed to a vanished super-civilization is a wonder taken away from the real people who built it. The Egyptians, the Teotihuacanos, the Norte Chico. The lost civilization hypothesis, critics argue, quietly tells indigenous builders, you could not have done this alone. The record says they could. They did. And yet, the pattern remains, unclaimed by either side. The same form on every inhabited continent again and again. We have heard the evidence and the arguments. Now we have to face the question itself.
Lay out everything we know. On 5 continents, across more than 5,000 years, human civilizations have raised pyramidal structures of extraordinary scale. They serve different purposes: tombs in Egypt and China, temple platforms in Mexico, ceremonial centers in Peru, a cosmic mandala in Java. The function changes everywhere, the form never does. And several of these monuments carry mathematics that goes beyond structural need. Not one shared blueprint, but one shared impulse, to make stones speak in proportion and alignment.
4 explanations remain standing, and each must pass the same test, the hardest fact in this story. Caral. 2 civilizations, 1 century, 0 contact. First, structural convergence. The pyramid is simply the most stable way to build tall, and every ambitious civilization rediscovers it. This passes Caral effortlessly. Independent invention is its whole point. But it explains shapes, not signatures. It cannot say why one pyramid in Egypt holds phi and pi, while 100 others hold nothing. Second, cultural diffusion. Ancient peoples shared more than we think, ideas traveling along coasts and trade routes. Plausible within continents, but against Caral it collapses. There were no vessels capable of crossing an ocean in 3000 BCE, and no trace of contact has ever been found. Third, the lost common ancestor. Hancock's thesis. A vanished culture seeded the knowledge everywhere, which would explain both the form and the mathematics. But it has no direct evidence anywhere in the archaeological record, and it must also explain why the inheritance looks so different in every region. Different techniques, different functions, different codes. An inheritance that shares nothing but a silhouette. And fourth, the strangest one, the cognitive archetype. The pyramid is wired into us, not taught, not transmitted, latent in the architecture of the human mind, waiting for the moment a society reaches the threshold of monumental construction. Humans everywhere dream the same dream, a mountain made by hands, connecting earth and sky. This passes Caral perfectly. It explains the recurrence, the divergent functions, even the urge to embed meaning in the stones. There is just one problem. No one knows how to prove it. 4 explanations. Each handles part of the evidence. Each leaves a gap. The pattern slips through all of them.
But consider what it means if that 4th explanation is even partially true. It means the pyramid is not an invention at all. It is a discovery, something already present in the human mind, the way language is present, the way music is present, a shape that is not learned but remembered, lying latent in us, waiting for the moment a civilization grows strong enough to say something enormous, and reaching every time for the same word. This idea should make us uncomfortable. We like to credit our monuments to individual genius, the brilliance of the Egyptians, the vision of Teotihuacan, the devotion of Java. And they are triumphs, each one. Let nothing take that from them. But if the form beneath them is pre-cultural, if it rises from the same cognitive depths that produce language and music and mathematics, then every pyramid on Earth is the same deep structure surfacing again and again, refracted through local stone, local gods, local dreams. The ancients had a name for what this shape does: the axis mundi, the world axis, the stone mountain that declares, we are here, we are reaching upward, and into our reaching we have written the order of the cosmos. And look around, we never stopped building it. The glass pyramid at the Louvre, the black hotel pyramid blazing in the Las Vegas desert, corporate logos, album covers. 5,000 years after Caral and Giza, with steel and glass and every form imaginable available to us, we still return to 4 sides, a square base, a point against the sky. Maybe the ancient builders knew something we have forgotten, or maybe they knew something we have not yet understood, about the relationship between geometry and consciousness, between the shape of a building and the shape of the mind that conceives it. Maybe the pattern was never in the stones. Maybe the pattern is in us. We began in the desert with a shape, 4 sides, a square base, rising, tapering, converging toward a point that touches the sky. We measured the angles at Giza and found the golden ratio hiding in the stone. We stood at Teotihuacan, in a city whose builders have no name, and read a calendar that may be written in its alignment. We crossed an ocean to Caral and found the same impulse in the same century in total isolation. We climbed Borobudur until the carvings ended and only sky remained. We counted 400 forgotten pyramids in China
and watch the 27,000-year-old revolution rise and fall on a hillside in Java, where the digging, even now, continues. That answer may come within years. Science is still working. The mystery is still real. The evidence does not close. The contradictions do not resolve. The pattern holds, and it slips through every explanation we build to contain it. So here is the question we are left with, the one the stones themselves seem to be asking in the only language they know. If a shape appears in every civilization that has ever reached for the sky, on every continent, in every millennium, for every conceivable purpose, is it an invention? Or is it a memory?